Puphoods. I feel like even just saying that is a little controversial. Ooh. I'm sure you've seen some discourse or discussion about puphoods in the furry fandom. Or I guess more specifically, puphoods in furry convention spaces. It starts the same, it goes on about the same, there's two sides to the coin, people that like puphoods, people that don't like puphoods for X, Y, or Z reason. They end up clashing with one another for a good week or so, and then after that, they move on to the next thing. Whenever I see this discourse going down on furry Twitter, it always saddens me a little bit, because in the end, you know, you have all this argument about like how a furry convention space could be better, or how people could feel better represented or show their self-expression in a furry space, and in the end, nothing is solved from it. Insults and comments are thrown back and forth at one another, and it's just sad to see overall. And even going into this video, I'm gonna be honest, I'm really nervous. This is one of those topics where no matter what side you take or how well you try to explain yourself, people are always gonna be angry with you, which is kind of the state of, you know, putting your opinion out there on the internet, period. But no matter what side you take from what it seems within the puphood drama, there are people that adversely disagree with that and make it very apparent that that is the case. But at least the one thing that I want to go into this video with acknowledging is please be respectful about this topic, about this discussion, about people's viewpoints on this, especially, you know, mine, because I'm trying my best to kind of not take sides here, but try to explain the reasoning for both sides. I don't want to flimsily put this together and not take into account different perspectives or sides to this whole argument, because in the end, there hasn't been a solution to it to this day. But either way, today I want to talk about the puphood drama, how it starts in the first place, what even is a puphood, or by proxy, the pup play community, where's the association with furry, how it became more of a prominent thing, how the drama starts in the first place, because it's rather funny. I've managed to narrow it down to 3 specific instances or events partaking on social media that end up blasting this discourse out of the water, and then every furry and their mother is talking about it. I want to go over the 2 sides to this discourse, those that are for puphoods, those that are against puphoods, the reasonings for both sides, and then ultimately I want to offer a solution to potentially mitigate any sort of discourse for this to happen in the future. And potentially I want to offer a solution to maybe minimize drama like this from happening and blowing out of proportion to what it usually does in the future. Also, as a disclaimer, this video will have talks about some sensitive topics, mainly around like adult-oriented things like kinks, fetishes, pup play, although I won't go too in-depth about it, saying anything explicit or showing any sort of sensitive images. Just keep in mind that this topic is a bit more adult-oriented. Does it mean that it's an age-restricted 18+ video? Not necessarily. If I miss anything that's important that's pertaining to this topic of discussion, please let me know as well. Alright, first things first, we gotta establish some basics. So, what is a puphood? Now, the best definition I could find came from puphood.co.uk, and it summarizes that a pup mask, sometimes called a puphood, is a high-quality sex product made from neoprene designed for pup play. It's designed with durable materials, which are stretchy and soft, and is made breathable, comfortable, and easy to wear, and the muzzle piece is removable. So if you're wondering how people can breathe in it, they can breathe in it. But the definition is pretty simple. It even states that it is a sex product made for pup play, which pup play, according to Wikipedia, is a form of fetishistic animal play where participants dress in dog costumes. Now, the definition, I believe, is true at a base level, but I feel like there needs to be a little bit more context or definition added, because this could really apply to anything. I mean, hey, if you replace it with something like fursuit sex, you still have an accurate definition. Now, this is different from furries in the sense that roleplay seems a lot more in-depth and headspacey for pups compared to furries. And one of the obvious differences between the pup community and furry is the vibe entirely. Furries wear these ooh-woo cutesy colorful fursuits, and pups wear a lot more adult, mature-looking attire along with their hoods. I mean, the hoods can kind of serve the same purpose if you think about it. Puphoods allow them to display their animalistic personality without hurting anyone. Mentally, it helps people to be more confident and in tune with their inner instincts. Many have been in depression for months but need something to make them positive. With puphoods, they are covered. I think the big thing to keep in mind is that fursuits and puphoods kind of have similarities in how they can be used. And the 2 prime examples I can think of are, 1, they can be used for sex purposes, but they're mainly used for a form of self-expression, and that's something we'll get into later on in this video. Now, with regards to pup play in the furry fandom, or in this case puphoods versus fursuits, which is an argument used a lot of times with regards to this discourse, the main thing is, even though both of these can be used in, you know, bedroom scenarios, they both have this usage in self-expression. Now, if you're curious about the differences between the 2 communities, I highly recommend Artemis Wishfoot's video on, well, differences between the pup community and the furry fandom. He does an excellent job at highlighting the distinct differences between the 2 and the things that make them unique. And I think he went over some of the similarities where you already know pup play and furry have a little bit of like in common stuff. But if you want to see the differences between the two, I highly recommend checking out that video. It'll be linked in the description below. Just keep in mind some images in the video might be sensitive, so just fair warning with that. Now, although Puphoods are tied mainly to the pup community, they've expanded into the furry fandom in the past few years, growing more and more in popularity within the adult crowd. And it's not like the pup community is infringing upon furry, it's more of furries kind of saw this thing and they're like, oh, this is neat, and then, apply it into furry, and there's already this little bit of overlap, so why not? So pretty simply, Puphoods have become more of a popular thing within furry within the past however many years. I mean, the discourse, as far as I know, has existed since 2017, but I've seen it more and more where Puphoods have become more common in the adult crowd. You see it every so often at cons or at furry-related events, mainly during after dark hours at cons or during the adult-only events, but they're not really as common as you'd think they are. You'd see like maybe 1 or 2 at every furry convention during the daytime, and probably a bunch of them during the after dark night hours. But nowadays, it seems like you see a lot more Puphoods online, at least with people wearing them out and about and expressing themselves however they see fit. Which actually leads to why this drama has become more and more prominent and repeating in the past few years. So like I said, this discourse has been going on for a while, and the earliest instance I could find was from late 2017, over half a decade ago. And the drama itself starts for a plethora of different reasons, but the results are always the same in the same sort of divide, with the two sides of being for Puphoods or against Puphoods. And a couple of the catalysts to this drama are scenarios like someone has a hot take, saying Puphoods are bad, they're ugly, they look awful, usually just insulting how they look or people who wear them. Sometimes it starts from those dreaded posts of, what is your take on furry that would have you in this scenario? It's like, dude, it's a bait post. Don't do it. And then they do it and have a hot take on Puphoods, and oh, look at that, they've started the drama again, look at that. I remember quite literally, a year and a half ago, someone made some post about it saying that they look dumb. I ended up seeing it on my feed and made a post saying, oh, it's happening again, it's that time of the year again, with lobster emojis because I had rock lobster stuck in my head at the time. And then what do you know, the usual discourse started. It's actually pretty funny because when I was researching that tweet for this video, I couldn't find it initially. And that's because the person who made it deleted it, saying that all the anti-furry, anti-gay, and army-obsessed right-wingers found the tweet and were agreeing with them. So they're like, I take it back, the masks are baller. Which, like, it kind of makes sense that that would lead to that. Any sort of infringement upon anything that furries do that is very public and open usually attracts that kind of crowd. So it's kind of funny how they realized the crowd they were attracting and then were like, wait a minute, this isn't what we want. Which I guess should lead to, I guess, the narrative behind starting this discourse in the first place, but that's besides the point. But the first start of this drama is usually some sort of hot take, or someone stating their opinion about Puphoods, and that ending up being reposted and talked about all throughout furry Twitter. The second catalyst is usually someone wearing a Puphhood taking a picture or video of themselves in public while wearing one, context doesn't apply, just besides those two things. Or the third option, some rule is made by a convention that Puphoods aren't allowed or limited at certain times. I believe the 2017 Puphhood drama actually started because of this, but it was sort of insinuated in Artemis's video, but to get an idea as to how this even starts, like for reference, like back in March 2023, the thing that started it was a hot take about them being stupid looking. The drama started earlier this year from a post that Libs of TikTok made showing a video of someone in a Puphhood at a Denny's with the caption, "We have a serious mental health crisis in this country." But when I saw this at first, I was like, God, please don't let this spark the Puphhood drama again. Please don't start this, please. God damn it, it's happening again. Every time I see this furry drama happen, I think of the giant from Twin Peaks, where he goes, "It is happening again." And then just Dale Cooper starts bursting out into tears like, God, I can't see my furry Twitter feed for a week now. But after that post, someone made an interesting little infographic that I can't find anymore because the tweet was deleted, but it went along the lines of something like, this is a fursuit, they showed a picture of a fursuit, then underneath that, this is a mental illness, and then a picture of a Puphhood. And with that post, the wheel of furry drama had spun once again and landed on Puphoods to be the main argument on furry Twitter for the next 2 weeks. And as soon as furry Twitter caught a whiff of Puphoods being mentioned, it was all over. The drama started and furries started arguing with one another. Hence the main point of this video. Though there might be several different reasons for why this discourse starts in the first place, it always ends up resulting in two sides being taken, or a third for those that just don't care and don't participate in it. It's either those against Puphoods or for them. And with that being said, I would like to break down the two sides of this discourse and discuss the reasons, whether they be reasonable or not, for supporting their arguments. Which I will say, all of these reasons are pretty much valid, but How they're handled, or rather executed, is questionable in my opinion. Now, for those who are against Puphoods, it mostly boils down to not wanting to see them at furry conventions or in safe for work spaces. The most common argument is that it shouldn't be out in a public space and shouldn't be out at all ages furry conventions in the daytime. You can take off the little bit there of in the daytime because usually they just say, oh, it shouldn't be at furry conventions, period. Never really opting for when they should be allowed, but sometimes just saying, oh, I don't want to see them. Which in all honesty is reasonable, knowing the association of the headwear, even if it might be just someone existing in it, going about getting a coffee with their day, not doing anything in it. Others just might not want to see it or might be uncomfortable by it. I remember when I was starting in furry, I used to actually be this way. I used to see them, think they were a little creepy at first, but I would really only acknowledge it at that and then just keep going on with my day. Nowadays, I kind of think they're neat, but we'll get into that later. And that's the main thing. If you associate something with sex and you see it out and about in a public space, usually you might not be comfortable with that. And that is valid. There was one argument that I actually saw on a Reddit thread, surprisingly, I know, but someone left an interesting reply that I think honestly ties a lot of this together into perspective of the perception of pup masks. Anyways, saying there isn't anything inherently sexual about pup masks is like saying there isn't anything inherently sexual about walking around in a diaper or wearing a leather gimp suit. Which is actually true, because nothing has intrinsic meaning. We collectively assign meaning to these things. The first to imbue these objects with meaning were the people who created pup masks for the express purpose of engaging in gay BDSM, and then later society, at least those aware of it, who recognized them for this functionality. Now for you and for others, pup masks and your utilization of them could be completely non-sexual, but the problem is how they fit into a public space and how they reconcile with public perceptions, which still largely views them as kink gear because that is what they were made for and that is what they are used for, even if it's not all the time by all the people who own them. Public perceptions aren't fixed, but ones centered around certain taboos can be hard to shake. You would be right in a sense to say that this perception is others people's problems, but that's living in a collective society for you. I think that is an excellent way to phrase this whole thing and to kind of understand the overall perception of Puphoods. It started as fetishistic attire, and might be something now, or it might be not that same meaning to those who use it, which we'll get into that specifically, but it doesn't mean that that intrinsic meaning of it isn't there. And so even if some folks might be going around a con space just wearing a Puphood, minding their own business, going and getting a coffee, not even participating in pup play per se, it doesn't mean to those that see it that the intrinsic meaning behind it isn't sexual. And the same thing can be argued about fursuits in some sense. The difference between fursuits and bursuits. How are you gonna know? What's the difference? But that actually gets into the territory of really trying to understand, the intention behind what someone is wearing, which that is a really weird rabbit hole to go down, and I'd rather not do that today. I've discussed it in previous videos too, where things that might appear to be fetishistic or might be someone's kink or something based on what they're wearing at a con, even if it has no intrinsic value of it being that, is a weird slippery slope that, honestly, you kind of just have to hope for the best intentions from whoever is using or wearing it. Now, because Puphoods are tied to a kink or fetish, that being pup play, the most common argument is that it shouldn't be out in public and shouldn't be out at all ages furry conventions in the daytime. I even said before, oh, you could take out the in the daytime part because most people don't say that. But being uncomfortable with Puphoods for any reason is reasonable, especially knowing the association with the headwear. Even if it might just be someone existing in it, others might not want to see it or might be uncomfortable by it. Which that actually leads me to the next point, in which some people see the Puphoods as creepy or are generally uncomfortable by how it looks. That's valid as well. Some people don't like furries because of thinking fursuits are creepy or having masculophobia in general, so having a general distaste for it can lead to that original argument. Some folks can be just against it because they don't like it. One argument that I've seen, which I don't necessarily agree with, is that Puphoods being a part of furry or furries using them, even, behind closed doors and in 18+ spaces, over-sexualizes the community, which, guys, seriously? You'll also have folks who, like stated earlier, will start random hot takes or give their opinion about Puphoods and by proxy end up insulting everyone who has one. And this has been seen countless times, where even if some folks are just wearing it behind closed doors or are using it in an appropriate manner, they'll still get berated for it by furries simply because they don't like that thing. Which this could just come down to, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. I feel like the big caveat that I have with this drama starting are the hot takes or opinions. You don't have to like it, just be nice to those who do enjoy it, God. Look, the one thing I'll say is insulting people who wear it in the proper setting is kind of shitty. And if anything, those hot takes or those negative opinions towards them doesn't allow for proper open discussion or critiquing of it. It just allows others who support it to retaliate against those who don't like it. You see, just downright attacking it and attacking people who enjoy it doesn't really allow for the criticisms to reach the way it needs to. Like, yeah, Puphoods being associated with a kink at the start, and people not wanting them in safe workspaces or at furry conventions at all age cons, not wanting to expose that to minors or anything, I think that's fair. But I think that argument gets lost a lot in folks who just say, oh, it looks ugly, it looks bad, it sucks, I hate it. It's just, you can be constructive about it, don't be destructive. That's why I feel like this discourse hasn't really been thoroughly analyzed or really taken seriously, because a lot of it just ends up starting with insulting and bickering until it's just a back and forth, and nothing productive is done from it in the end. It's just making people angry without addressing the actual issues. Criticizing from a place of understanding the other person's end of it without being dismissive of their needs or wants or how they feel about it can grant better results. Which, with that in mind, let's go over the other end of the argument, the people defending or being for Puphoods in this drama. Now, as much as the argument against Puphoods might be valid in the sense of just not wanting them in safe workspaces and just generally not being comfortable by them, it doesn't mean they should be eliminated, and it doesn't mean those who enjoy them should feel harassed or targeted or instigated because they enjoy them. Which I feel like is where a lot of the Puphhood drama ends up being. That's why it's drama and discourse rather than an actual discussion of like what is okay and what isn't okay in a furry convention space or in safe workspaces or in public. And then you also tie in the folks that really, really deeply worry about the image of furry, and I've already talked about that in a separate video. It's okay to think that it's creepy, but, if people are enjoying it appropriately, they're not, making others uncomfortable by it purposefully, and they're just existing doing their thing, and there's nothing wrong with it, then all the power to them, that's what it should be. With those who are for Puphoods. Probably the biggest argument that I've seen as of recently is that furries who are for Puphoods being at furry conventions see it as mainly a form of self-expression. Some don't see it as a problem with it being worn in public or around, as long as appropriate behavior is being made. Appropriate conduct, for that matter. That because there are no sexual or explicit actions that are being done with the Puphhood, that it's fine for self-expression. To some, it's simply seen as a mask, and it has a similar purpose to a fursuit. It's a head cover or mask used as a form of self-expression, to put on a character, to cosplay, or roleplay. And you'll usually see this as the rebuttal to the claim initially. Well, fursuits are kinda like Puphoods. They're allowed at cons when they can be used for sex, so why should Puphoods not be allowed? Why not ban fursuits too? Why is there not the same energy for fursuits? And then there's also folks in the middle ground of it, kinda like me, who don't mind it, but think that there should be just a regulation of when to wear it, like having it be during late night hours of the con, adult events, 18+ cons, etc., which, hey, I can get behind that. The main thing though with this, and I can at least vouch for the supporter side of it, is that Puphoods are a form of self-expression and aren't always or strictly used within the context of pup play with that associated kink or fetish. I've seen furries adopting Puphoods as more of a form of self-expression in the community that is separate from the kink or fetish associated with the mask. I mean, I guess even an argument to put it simply is like, oh, is a Puphhood something that you'd let, like, a kid wear? No, I probably wouldn't. The one observation that I'll make that I haven't seen really a proper argument for on Twitter is I feel like furries have adopted Puphoods as more of a form of self-expression in furry that is entirely separate from the pup play kink, or the association that the Puphhood has to its original creation. It may not be intended to be sexual from the user, wearer, or participant, and that is valid. However, the implications and insinuations of it to others and its initial intended purpose from the implications make it a sex thing or fetishistic. I guess the same thing could be taken into account with the life jacket thing, but let's not, we'll talk about that later. I feel like in this case, the furry fandom has adopted this as its own thing more than what it is initially known for. And that's the thing too, furry is literally a community about self-expression, hence Puphoods in furry being used as a form of self-expression. Not that they're not being used as such outside of furry, but that point of self-expression as a character, as the energy you want to give off, is emphasized more so in a primary queer community that is furry. And that's the main thing that I feel like would be a good solution here. If furries could shed the former representation of puphoods to pup play, if that was possible, I feel like that would completely fix a lot of the issues. And it would really just kind of boil down to folks, don't like things they think is creepy. I don't even know if it's possible to fully shut off a former representation of something and give it a whole new meaning, especially in furry like this. Especially knowing, furry. Furry has an adult side too. If anything, I feel like that's how the puphood thing kind of jumped into furry, or furries took that and went with it. But I think the intention attempt here is worth noting, which this is a whole discussion in and of itself that I don't know if I can really get into today. Not everyone wants to associate it with a fetish or kink. That's valid, and wanting to express yourself in however you see fit without it being targeted as that is something that I feel like those who support puphoods want. The argument might be there that they're not doing anything in it that is sexual, but the association with it is there. The same thing can go for furry, but I feel like most, if not all, furries or anyone that knows anything about furry knows it's a lot more than just the adult side. And yeah, that same argument about, just because it's not a sexual act doesn't mean it's not sexual can apply to furry in general, with the argument of mersuits or fursuits used for NSFW purposes. As much as that might exist and is a part of furry, we all know that is not the main point or purpose of the fursuit. I saw some argument that fursuits were originally started as sort of a sex thing, or for the kink or fetish side, which I don't necessarily know if that's true or not. But regardless of whether it has or not, fursuits have established a much broader meaning than just that. And fursuits are a pretty big and pivotal thing within the furry community. I feel like as much as puphoods are used as a form of self-expression for some, it's not as much of a pillar in the community as fursuits are. That's not to say they're not meaningful to some, they can be, and I feel like to some extent, any form of self-expression should be a form of self-expression. And realistically, I kind of wish there was a way to shed that former reputation of a puphood to mean something else so that it means what they're intending it to be. Getting into the territory of what is or isn't sexual all comes down to public perception and how people see it. As much as I might be okay with someone going around at a furry convention, just in a puphood, going and grabbing coffee, talking with their adult friends, and going about to the dealer's den and having a good time, doesn't mean that someone else thinks that's okay either. And that's the unfortunate part about this drama. I think the main issue here is that it's tied to a kink, and that I feel like is the argument that both sides at least have in common. So with all this in mind, what is the solution here? I wrote here on the script that there isn't one, but there are a few options that I can think of. These two sides have different arguments, but I feel like the points are made very loosely and sometimes very poorly on Twitter for a week or two, then it ends and eventually picks back up a year later. So with this drama having gone on for over 6 years now, will there ever be an end to it? I don't think so. People argue about it on Twitter because they want to, and you gotta keep in mind that what happens on furry social media does not necessarily bleed into the IRL aspect of furry, like furry conventions per se. That's why I say whenever there's furry convention drama, instead of complaining about it on Twitter, reach out to the con, give feedback, email them, do your due diligence. You do your part, I'm doing my part, And ultimately, they are just arguments on the internet. The IRL aspect of furry is a whole different thing that doesn't take too much into account from small drama, unless a con has made a statement or rule change on it. Which, speaking of cons, I probably think the best and easy solution here is let furry conventions decide what is appropriate or inappropriate for the con space, especially with the concerns about puphoods being allowed in a furry convention space for all ages. Let cons decide that. Let furry conventions make the decision of what is okay and what isn't. If you don't like how a con is doing it, contact them about it with your feedback in an appropriate and respectful manner. Quote retweeting them or subtweeting them about it will not help. And you gotta keep in mind too, we're also in the wake of potentially a lot more separate 18+ furry conventions being made for adults and adult audiences. So if that's the case and more are popping up, it shouldn't be a problem there. Wearing a puphood out and about at an 18+ con, I feel like is completely okay and fine. All times of the day. And especially at furry conventions for all ages, even though it is kind of the secret rule, and some conventions do it differently, there sometimes is the after dark hours of a con, where that sort of attire after a certain time is allowed. The unfortunate thing about this is there isn't a governing power in the furry fandom, so you don't have a president passing through new rules. The closest thing to one are conventions or event leaders, people who take time to make the IRL portion of furry happen. If that didn't happen, I feel like furry would just be a dumpster fire constantly if it's only on social media. And this is an assumption here. Most of the time, furry convention staff members really don't care about the quarrels of furry Twitter, unless it directly, affects them and it's an actual issue at their con. So at the end of the day, let them decide or contact them. Or if you don't like it, run your own. It's a pretty simple argument. And if you don't like either side of the drama on Twitter, just block or mute and move on. Curate your own experience. Now, besides that, I did want to mention another potential solution here that a friend of mine actually came up with and posted a little infographic thing about a bit ago. Because see, the problem with Puphoods, at least from what I've seen on both ends of it, is that they're tied to the not safe for work community, being pup play, kink, fetish, and everything. For those that want to use it as a form of self-expression, I feel like it should be allowed, but trying to shed that NSFW original aspect to it is hard to do. And so with that in mind, I feel like the solution is for furries to make their own. Why not make an alternative to Puphoods for furries, by furries, for furries, without the intrinsic property of it being tied to pup play? And this is where my friend Simple Nix actually put together this neat little infographic of a fursuit crossed with a pup mask. It's got like the eye mesh, the neoprene, and in the bottom right it says, what do they do at night? Who cares? I think that is like one of the better solutions to this whole thing. And I feel like even as is, the consensus for allowing Puphoods at furry cons, it really should just come down to, time and place. After dark at a con or at an 18+ con. I feel like that's the easiest solution here. I love the reply here too. Pup masks were made from kink. Well, this one was made with fun and whimsy, so where do we go from here? And that's ultimately kind of what it comes down to. You make a new version of a Puphood that isn't a Puphood. It could be alternatively such a cheaper solution to fursuits for those that want some version of it. It's an idea, I'd like to think. It might not be perfect, but it's something. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to this Puphood drama entirely, just use your best intuition of what should be allowed in a certain time and place. Remember those words from Professor Oak. There's a time and place for everything, but not now. I think what it comes down to is Puphoods, as much as they might be seen as a form of self-expression for some, they have that intrinsic property of it being associated with pup play. Some may have no issue with it, especially if it's not being used for any sort of sexual purpose, especially out in public or in a con space, but some might not think that way either. And for some that might not like it, it might be more than the argument is it's a sex thing, but rather they're just not comfortable by it because it is or isn't a sex thing. Or they just might not be comfortable by it. Now that I think about it, I feel like this entire argument about Puphoods at furry conventions could kind of bleed into the argument about kink at Pride, which I feel like some people have made that argument about in the past, but I don't know if I'm well equipped to talk about that. There are ways to be respectful about critiquing something or someone's behavior without thinking the worst of them. And I think the issue that happens a lot of time with this Puphood drama is formalities go out the window as soon as they're mentioned. Those that don't like it, aren't really respectful of those that enjoy it, and for those that enjoy it and are wearing it as a form of self-expression. The bottom line is let people who are appropriately enjoying their things enjoy it. I think what a lot of this comes down to is understanding the inherent sexuality or lack thereof sexuality between like fursuits and Puphoods, because I really do like the solution of allowing Puphoods after certain hours during the con, like after dark hours, or allowing them in 18+ cons. Or just allowing for more time for those who enjoy furry conventions to have the 18+ adult furry con experience, which we've seen happening more and more at furry conventions in general. A lot more nights where there's like an after dark event or an adults only event where it's all like closed off and people are able to wear their attire like around the con, which I feel like is a good thing. It's a good middle ground that I feel like is shifting in a better direction. Same thing with more 18+ cons in general. I don't know if there are any issues of wearing Puphoods at an 18+ con, like I guess LVFC, which I guess now is a 21+ con, but it realistically comes down to how appropriate is it for the time and place. And at the end of the day, you kind of just have to use your best judgment. I know that doesn't really help to mitigate any of the drama, period, or find a proper solution for it, but the court of public opinion can only result in so much. The best solution, in my opinion, is to take arguments like this and not try to use it as a method to attack others or to harass or instigate them into being defensive. You have to come from it from a point of understanding and critique with the sense of being productive. Don't be destructive, be constructive. I have the same arguments for this when I did my Denver diaper drama video on my other channel, in which someone was going about in a con space wearing a diaper on the outside of their fursuit. And although it might not be sexual for the way they are wearing it, intrinsically it has the association to an adult interest sort of thing. There was someone wearing a balloon animal costume at a con, and people were throwing flack at that, saying, oh, it's probably a sex or fetish thing, because it was made by an inflatable kink company. In that situation, it was just someone going about the con in a balloon animal costume. Just because it was made by it doesn't necessarily mean it was that. That's why I'm just unsure of where the proper middle ground lies for this exact issue. I definitely agree that there's some ways to be able to express it appropriately, and that it is, a genuine form of self-expression for some. Unfortunately, it just has ties to it being intrinsically sexual. Now, outside of these potential solutions, there's really nothing else to do about this drama. There's really no way to mitigate it or minimize it, because at the end of the day, people will have their opinions on it. Even if, rules were made to ban all puphoods from con spaces and, 18 plus cons became a thing, people would still complain about it no matter what. That's just how it is. You gotta keep in mind that even though furry drama is furry drama, the furry fandom is, a people fandom. It's a people community. There will be all sorts of people with all sorts of thoughts and opinions or wanting to change things about the community for the better, or in their eyes for the better, that will likely result in this back and forth about puphoods again on furry Twitter, or whatever the next social media platform will be. But I think at the very least, taking into account both sides of the arguments can help make some better decisions for everyone and maybe make everyone a little bit smarter from it. Maybe one day we'll come to some consensus about it all and never have to argue about this again. And hopefully this video did give some insight into the whole thing. I don't know if I've changed any minds about puphoods in general, which really wasn't the purpose of this. What I can hope at the very least is that you learned a little bit from this and that you're better off from understanding how this works in the future. And like I said at the beginning of the video, you can't make both sides happy. You're gonna have some people that are unhappy no matter what you say or do. You can try, but it won't be perfect and it surely won't work in general. The bottom line is some drama is kinda left to happen regardless of how much we try to mitigate it, and all we can try to do is learn from it each time it happens. But that, guys, is pretty much the furry puphhood drama in a nutshell. So on that note, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video or have any thoughts and opinions on what I had to say here, please be sure to let me know in the comments, but please do so respectfully. That's the one thing I love about all these videos that I do whenever I talk about something controversial. People are very respectful about different viewpoints and thoughts and opinions on this, so just keep up the good work with what you guys have been doing in the previous videos. That's pretty much it. If you would like to check out Artemis Wishfoot's video on the differences between pup play and the furry fandom, I highly recommend that. I'll be linking Artemis's video about the differences between the pup play community and the furry fandom in the description below if you want to check that out. Just, fair warning, there's sensitive graphics in that video too. Just kind of like the discussion in this one, but you get the idea if you've already made it this far. A couple of notes for just this video in general. Understand that a lot of what I say now might change in a few years, or months even. This video has the potential to age like milk. I did my best to make it so that it doesn't, but who knows where time will lead. Also, as a note, I might not have said everything that might need to be mentioned in this video that might be prevalent to this whole discussion as a whole, so if I did miss anything, please let me know in the comments. I'm probably going to be putting together some sort of master comment where I leave like my edits or inclusions of other discussions or points, so that if anyone wants more information that I didn't mention here, that'll be in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know in the comments. I greatly appreciate all the support and the feedback you guys have had from me so far. It's been so wonderful. Y'all are so nice. It means a lot, okay? Remember to be respectful to one another in the comments if you are talking about this puphhood drama, because it is, obviously a topic that has gone on for a while now. It's sensitive for some, it has sensitive topics and imagery and whatnot, so treat people like people. Not like animal characters on a computer screen that don't have emotions, I don't really have anything to promote for this one, but if you want me to talk about any other lingering topics in the future, be sure to let me know. A lot of the videos that I actually do come from recommendations from you guys, so if there's stuff that you want to see me cover, I do appreciate the recommendations. But other than that, I've really got nothing else. Have a wonderful day, take care, life stay jacket, treat people like people, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm gonna do something dumb for this outro here. Hopefully I don't hurt myself. I didn't crush my glasses, did I? We're good? Okay, we're good. We're good. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Okay, bye.